Season 4, Episode 2, the WooFA Work-from-Anywhere reality. In this episode, Sara tells of a WooFA experience while walking her dog mid-work break when a bulldog muscled its way up a drive and launched into an attack on her dog. The boys, Alan and Trajce, discuss employer liabilities, and Sara reminds the boys that businesses like Joanna Clough's The Dog Safe Workplace, yep, that's right, The Dog Safe Workplace, the reflections continue to cross over in healthcare and other WooFA experiences. Sara regales a tale of her presentation of neurological symptoms that caused her emergency room admission during a workday. A good person will fail in a bad system. For some background, this episode marries well to Season 1, Episode 3, Pets and Air Fryers. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to this first and enjoy this episode after. Hello and welcome to the Why Work podcast series. You are listening to Trajce Vitkovsky, Sara Pizzell and Alan Girl.
Look, things have gone a bit quiet, so I want to throw it out there because we talked a lot about it and it was the zeitgeist at the time. And we all got excited about it. Where are we at with working from home or working from anywhere? What do you think the mood of the WFA or WFH?
WooFA, the WooFA.
Yeah, work from anywhere or work from home. Is it still a thing?
It's still a thing.
Yeah.
It's still a thing. You know, okay. Trajce, the other day, I think I mentioned this to you, Alan, I was walking my dog, right? And we were going down a lovely, one of our favorite little walks.
And your dog didn't run away?
My dog didn't run away.
Wow.
No, he's right with me. No problem.
But your dog tends to run away.
What?
Your dog tends to run away.
Oh, he wants to if he gets the chance, but he didn't. No. Lovely day, gorgeous sun, taking a little break from some work, short walk, and from a neighbor's driveway, and it's vertical, it went up to the street, I noticed this bulldog. And I thought, what? And there was no lead and no collar. And he just started to stroll. He was, casually, I don't know if they stroll, they sort of stomp with wide elbows, right?
Stubby little things.
Muscled his way up this driveway.
Yes.
And I thought, uh-oh. And I thought, okay, so I moved our trajectory of movement changed. I went across the road. And I thought, I'll just give us some space.
Yep.
Seemed calm. No, this thing sprinted across the road and started to attack us.
Oh, no.
Sprinted aggressively and started to attack my dog. And I was in the mix, and I'm getting
Sara.
the lead tangled up in between all of us. I'm like, freaking out thinking, what do I do? Now, I've watched YouTube things about what to do in the middle of a dog fight. The YouTube advice is to put your leg over and straddle a dog so that then you take control. There is no way. I have even tested this out. There is no way. A dog starts jumping left, right, and center, kicking you off. Like, there's no way that's going to work. No. So I need to learn from some good dog trainers. We've got Joanna from the Dog Safe Workplace coming, right, to learn about this. Because what would happen if I'm in the middle, if I'm employed by you and I'm walking my dog, I get attacked and there's an injury. And we've already established that there's some liability, right?
Yeah,
and here I am on my own, dog walk time. Fortunately, and that dog bit into the side flank of our dog, right?
Oh,
right?
no.
Yeah. So fortunately, finally, some young teens ran up and they were able to hold the neck flesh and around the way to their dog and help restrain him, because there would have been no way I could have gotten this dog off by myself.
Was this their dog?
Yeah.
So it's bolted out of the face. It's
bolted somehow got its way out, muscled its way up the driveway.
Dog.
Looked calm for a moment until it wasn't.
And
then it really was. But there are so many unknowns that can happen in the work from anywhere. But at the same time, it is such a desirable feature for so many workers, those who have the luxury of working in a space that's safe and, protective and both healing for them. In other words, they've got adequate space. They're not sharing a room with 5 other people. They, culturally are not having to caregive at the same time. They live in a good neighborhood. There are privileged folks who are privileged to have that safe home workplace and adequate space and tools and equipment. They want that. Yeah. And there's that movement to enable that.
We've got the good fortune of presenting with work cover, which is the workers' comp provider, and as you know, and I've had some early discussions with the representative that's going to co-present on work covers perspective on work from home, and I'm not getting any indication at all from them that they're trying to fence in the area of liability. I think at the moment it's still wide open.
Yeah, no pun intended, fence in.
Your $21,000 fence, Trajce, for his dog.
It's a bloody good fence. The dog was cheap as chips, but not the fence.
Not the fence.
But, but what I wonder though, I'm going to flip it, and I've wondered because I like to do a bit of a hybrid, I do a bit of both. I have noticed when I do come into the office, we have a bit of a banter, the door's open, we have a bit of a chat. For me, it's a good reason to have a coffee with a couple of colleagues. Sometimes I'll have colleagues who have retired come in because they're nearby, and we talk about stuff. I assure you, and this is the type of person I am, no amount of Teams or no amount of sort of, teleconference could ever replace that human connectedness that you do get. So if you've got a good work environment, it is good to come into the office because in terms of doing your work, but you're also talking to people. And I wonder, what will the WFH...
You've got such a beautiful environment here to work in.
Correct.
I'd never go home if I was.
For a start, the parking's free, and that can be stressful.
All of these features, mate, you make a good point. Like, you've got to work extra hard to make it attractive to come to somewhere away from your home if you're in one of those, I call it a privileged role, a cognitive worker where you're not relying to be the frontline worker, where you could do concentrated work from home, right?
Yeah.
If you're one of those type of cognitive-based professional roles, then sure, what's going to attract you to come into the office? The social milieu, the tribal culture that has to be very positive and encouraging.
Have you been to Sara's office?
Yeah.
Good design?
We did the draft run of the first episode in Sarah's office. We had a preview with guests.
Community preview.
No, that's not the office.
That's the office.
Is that the office?
In the back. You saw it. So I do. I've worked home office. I've been work from home, work from anywhere, really, cafes, whatever, for more than 20 years. Yeah. I was it before it was it was a thing. I was doing that.
You were breaking ground.
And in fact, our consultancy team, we had an office once in Tenerife in Brisbane, and nobody used it. Nobody used it. They preferred we go out to client sites, and their office is our office while we're doing the consultation and assessments and participatory transformative processes that we do. and then we observe and we interview and we have to live a day in the life of it, empathize with the folks, and then we go back and write reports and consult and meet. And never did our team really at the same time want to be in, or not that they did not want to be, but it didn't coalesce easily in everybody's schedule to be another C word, coalesce, to be in the same place, same time. And so we just disbanded that office. We just didn't need it.
Right. And it's not just privileged workers. Many people are, whether they're telecallers or they're just doing like data entry from home, which is the new blue collar work, certainly if you measure the rate of pay. And that's really difficult, repetitive work, and it's got its own sets of injuries as well. So, no, it's not just the privileged few, Sarah. It's not just, say, us.
Well, I call that privilege if you have that a little bit of a choice around that, and if the nature of the work could be done elsewhere. Whereas there are frontline workers when the nature of the work just can't, just cannot be done. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks very much, and good luck.
Oh, I'm really comfortable speaking about sort of health needs and my life generally. A pretty open book in some of these recordings. And I think it might be useful for people to think about this issue because it's not commonly experienced and not commonly captured by GPs. And I recently found out that I have an MTHFR gene, a zygotic MTHFR gene. And if you think that sounds like the mother for a gene, you are exactly right, because that's what I was calling it. That's what the doctors were calling it.
Okay.
And from that, I'll tell you the number. It's A1298C, right? And what it did was cause me to have a Bell's palsy. And I've been in here recording with you guys with a lisp. And you can hear back on some of those episodes, and I've been lisping and we've been giggling while that's been happening.
Oh, okay. Oh, I did not notice.
You did not notice. Shut up.
I did. Now, look, we're just trying to get all comfortable. It's almost like we're leading into a reflection on working from home.
Well, home and healthcare. It's actually just making me first think about healthcare. So when I had this Bell's palsy, which has sprung back, my face is back on now, right? It was caused because I couldn't methylate my folate. Right? And it's something, again, standard doctors won't find out. I had to do a lot of research. It looked like I'd had a stroke, so it was quite confronting. And I was able to get a lot of support from functional medicine, but it required a hell of a lot of self-advocacy and self-research that a lot of people are not equipped to do for themselves or even know where to begin. And I'm fortunate I have a healthcare background that's a good platform. And my experience in an emergency room was quite interesting. I gave feedback as I tend to do. And when I was in the emergency room, as soon as I walked in, I get this response from the team saying, stroke assessment, right? So if I was more vulnerable and particularly freaked out or somebody prone to anxiety, that would have just escalated my anxiety right then, because I can hear them calling down the line as they're looking at my, half-formed face going, stroke review down the hallway. The other thing that happened when I was moved up and they did their basic assessments, they pretty much discounted a lot of the feedback I was giving to them about some of my symptoms, the registrar initially, and I was really trying to connect that to some migraines that I've had this year. And the other aspect was, I said, I can walk. My body's moving fine, but they threw me in a bed. And I'm like, can I just walk here? No, you'll lose your bed. Absolutely not. You don't want to do that. So immediately I'm in like a sick roll, right? I'm watching the orderlies try to move around to have access, and they're bumping beds and people into all the pillars that are poorly placed all throughout the emergency department. And I'm supposed to go in to get some medical imaging. And I was in there, early in the evening. And then it progressed till I'm there till almost midnight. I kept saying, I've got a child home alone. Can you I'm not pushing that I get seen immediately, but can I just have some feedback so I can triage his care, right? How do I help manage what's going to happen at home? And I kept being told, just a moment, we'll be right with you. Or sorry, we can't predict that because anything could come in. I said, sure, I get that. I understand. I'm not trying to jump in front of anyone having a heart attack or a major neurological assault or something. And at the same time, there's a shift handover. Somebody's telling me that there's a shift handover. All this time, I'm lucky I brought my little snack pack. This is thinking ahead, okay? Risk assessment 101. I brought a little heated soup and a little sandwich with me. And because never once did anybody ask me if I wanted hydration or meal intake in this 5 hours, right? Yep. They had no pillows. They couldn't find any when I asked for some. They were short on pillows to provide any support. And I understand how taxed these workers are, right? It's demanding. At the same time, in the backdrop of this experience was a woman howling in obvious mental health distress, right? Obvious had some mental health issues, howling and screaming, and it was difficult for the staff and it was difficult for all of us as patients in this system. And I kept thinking about all their cognitive demands and all of the distraction and the ambient noise and having that constant howling that they're not thinking properly. And that was the case. What I found out as I self-advocated again, I said, you know what? I get it that it's hard to predict when I'm going to go in and get my medical imaging, but I am going to self-discharge because I've got a son at home and now no plan because we've left it too late. I can't really manage this, so I'm going to self-discharge. The minute I said, thank you, I'm self-discharging, boom, a whole bunch of action happened, right? Please just wait one moment. And they go, lo and behold, a bit of investigation. The order from the original registrar was never made. It was never processed for me to have imaging. And that's the only reason I was taking up a bed that I didn't want to be in. I had offered to give up my bed. I was told, no, don't. Only reason I was in there till late in the evening was that they'd forgotten to place the order. In fact, the imaging room was free and available the whole time.
Amazing. And, whilst for me, when you were telling me that vignette, that scenario, it's harrowing. I could visualize it all. It's not so much who's made an error, who hasn't made an error, none of that. It's that atmosphere. Those workers have no choice but to be. I mean, you were there as a visitor.
Yes.
You were hoping to get out, but imagine doing 12 hours of that.
Yeah, but there's also big design issues in that that just shouldn't have been like that in the first place.
Huge. And you think about that quote about a good person will fail in a bad system. The Demming quote, a good person, no matter how good the person is and how hard they're trying, you will fail in a poorly designed system.
I see that as you were describing your harrowing experience. Well, not only was there what I would describe as systemic calamity, it was a systematic sequence of calamitous events. Someone forgot to press the button and say, "Can we get some diagnostics?"
Just send the order. That's right.
So
That's
you see what I mean by this calamity? It says not only is there's this whole of... So it was dramatic.
Now,
you can only imagine what you were going through.
The work from home connection is such that I was actually working from home and I had to just get myself to the hospital and drive myself, right? And I'm just thinking, so what provisions are in place also? If you have a home worker who has some trauma, some medical event, is that your responsibility as an employer? Is it the employee's responsibility to somehow mobilize family that might be non-existent? In my case, I didn't have anyone to help me. My son certainly can't drive yet, right? It confronts us on many levels, the health system design and the home office distributed workforce management, right? There's multiple layers to this work system design. And so I share my story because I shared it with the feedback to the hospital system. I said, I'm just trying to let you know if I hope this prompts some improved system design. I'm also aware that they've had some human factors specialists in Queensland Health and some research projects that were not continued, and they were focused on good design of work. And I'm so disappointed to hear that has happened because there were some expert people who could model and simulate and then test, improve, and iterate better design. They're no longer in the system, so I happen to just P.S. I'm aware of that and really think you guys should reinstitute those kinds of functions because I'm still seeing the tail end evidence of poor design as a patient, and I can't help but see it from a system view. And I had to also prompt the things that I needed prescribed and negotiate this. And there was one comment from a healthcare provider that says, "Oh, I see, I guess you've been doing a little bit of research." And I said, "Well, I've had 5 hours. So I may as well be researching out of the good eye that's working things in my phone."
So that's so interesting, Alan. And I'm wondering, I'm sure some of our listeners would be wondering too, if you did really put your money where your mouth is and if you walked, do you think the hospital would have panicked because they may have seen some potential liability,
I think it goes on the register. I think it's negative KPIs. Oh, shit, somebody self-discharged and we didn't finalize the intervention. I feel as though the prompt was because it would be a KPI that wouldn't look favorable around that team at that time. Plus liabilities, right?
Potentially, like, shouldn't you go off, you drive home, there's an incident, and then there's suddenly an investigation.
Yeah. And I promise I wasn't being the pushy American, straight out of, the movies. I promise I was not playing that role. I was very patient.
You waited 5 hours.
You waited
I
5
waited 5
hours.
hours, and I repeatedly asked nicely, and I said, I understand. I'm not asking to be pushed forward. I'm just saying what I need to know what's happening in the system so I can make home plans. But if I work for myself, right? But if I worked for, your university, your law firm, how would I be supported? Curious.
It's an interesting question. If a worker is working from home and they need to get to hospital and they're incapable of getting themselves to hospital, where's the employer's responsibility?
Duty, that's right.
And it's a similar question to remote workers. If you have a remote worker and they need to get to hospital, where's the employer's responsibility? And I think that highlights that employers do have a responsibility for people working at home. And if a person working at home needs to go to hospital, an employer must have some degree of responsibility.
I mean, we talked in episode 12, season 3, Trajce, about your experience. You've got the fire blanket and the fire extinguisher, and you have all of the, hey, team, let's have a plan for the whole family, and it's still prompting me to institute that. And I can tell you right now, I haven't.
It's got a tagged toaster.
Tagged toaster.
Yes, well, when I say tag toaster, when the electrician comes in to do things for me, but I don't do my electrical work, so when he does stuff, I say, can you please check my toaster and my coffee machine, because they're my two go-tos.
What about your microwave?
Trajce,
you haven't had it tested and tagged.
Thank you.
There you are.
I said, can you have a look
The
at this as well?
the hair dryer.
How did you know about my hairdryer? It's got an almond scent that wafts through it. How did you know about that I take extra care of my hairdryer, which is tested, yes. I had introduced my phone charger. Now, this is a good example. I brought that to the premises and I use it because it's for my phone, my charger, but someone at work, because I leave it at work for charging, someone had tagged and tested. So there's a nice little synergy. Because clearly, obviously, there are days when we'll work from home. I take it. If I am emulating my experience in the traditional office, I want to make sure I've got a fire. But I already had that prior to working from home. I had my fire blanket. I had the little fire hydrant. I had my little things. I had all that stuff. I'm just, no pun intended, I'm wired that way.
You're wired that way. Well, I have, for the record, I've not yet heard back from the hospital after they solicited feedback. It was one of those routine feedback, so I'll be interested to hear what feedback I receive, if any. And I am, I like reflections, right? And I like to help educate. So I have made a point of calling the GPs that helped me that did not know to follow this path and did not know anything about MTHFR, the mother effer gene that I call it. No. I'm making sure that they know about this so that they can help anyone in future and they have an early response to triage so that somebody doesn't get to the point that I did where I needed that emergency room. I didn't want to consume resources, and I certainly didn't want to have that health experience or ill health experience. And, I think giving feedback is really important so people can continually to regenerate good design. So do you give feedback to ACU, for example, Australian Catholic University, about how you manage your home office? How is that a symbol, a case study for other people to learn from that? You have a fire blanket, you have a plan, you have electrical reviews.
Well, I haven't been invited specifically. However, during our committee meetings, we talk about various, work from home policies, and we have a pretty impressive checklist which covers off many things. But it's getting back to when you mentioned the feedback, all I could think of was continuous improvement.
Yeah.
So what was static? What was a good working from home list, say, prior to COVID, during COVID, and after COVID? Great. I think it should be an ongoing live document for continuous improvement to assure that people are, to the best of everybody's ability, working in a safe environment.
Back to C word, right? Communication and consultation.
So it doesn't end there.
So, Alan, if an employer had to defend themselves from an experience either like mine and there might have been a breakdown in the system of getting healthcare, or an experience where there's a fire at home and they didn't institute a policy or a procedure or a method of educating people how to manage fires at home, how are you going to defend that? What starts that process?
I think there's enormous vulnerability for employers, for workers that are working from home, and largely because we haven't thought it through.
It's all so new, isn't it?
It's all so new. It was sort of foisted on us in a big way during the pandemic, and we just really haven't got our house in order yet. No pun intended.
So what we're hearing a lot is that now there's this huge shift in the media about there are some employers demanding a return to the office because I think of this uncontrolled uncertainty around it, and yet there are some employees who've got some great vulnerabilities. I've heard about employees who used to work in Sydney were told, you can work from home anywhere. So they've relocated to the Sunshine Coast. And now if they get told to go back to work, that is a huge impact on their lives. Some employers are now saying, look, the happy number for us is 3 days. 2 days are flexible, and it's not really work from home. I call it work from anywhere, because you could be at a cafe, you could be here downstairs in the library, you could be at your children's school and still finding a little nook and cranny while they're doing their sport. It's work from anywhere, right? WFA.
Hybrid? We like that word.
Hybrid still implies one or the other, like home or office.
Like a hybrid car.
WooFA, work from anywhere.
WooFA, work from
baby.
WooFA, yeah.
Like subwoofer?
Anywhere? WooFA?
Well, I guess that's the fear, isn't it? And
That's
yet
the
I'm one of
fear.
those people that I work
being-
extra when I'm from home. Like
Yeah.
I am putting in early mornings and late nights. So there are some people who are so incredibly committed, and I think that'll just be their nature no matter what. And others who you might have to monitor no matter where they were, right? There
And
has to be
that's
some
the thing.
trust and
It's gotta
respect
be
around
trust.
this.
It's gotta be, so the reason I threw it out there provocatively is
WooFA.
because, WooFA, you're going to have the people who will game the system and others who probably, Alan, you mentioned this in the very first season, they may overwork, and who's keeping an eye on the overly industrious 12 hours
That's
a
right.
day? So there's got to be communication. It's not even a question of trust.
Yeah.
It's a question of conversation.
Boundaries
Are
and
you having
performance.
that conversation?
Yeah.
So, Trajce, have you ever been called a woofer?
Never. Never been. I can prove
Sarah,
it with
have
my
you been called a
capability.
woofer?
Yeah, no, never.
Nah,
No,
not a
no, no,
woofer.
no.
We'll have to think of an acronym when you overwork. No. Anyway, we'll have to think about that one. But this is the whole thing about working from home.
Control is what I think people
Yeah.
are rebelling against. If I'm
Yeah.
told I must do anything, right? The natural rebel in me goes, freaks out.
That's right. And if you don't, you'll be fined, or there'll be consequences.
And you can involve
it's-
people in a participatory way to engage them in deciding which tasks, which systems, which experiences, which seasons of work require more of our commitment together as a team in the same space, and which might not. And how do we manage that web and flow without being so ritualistic and formal in rules? But I understand the need to feel like there is some sense of control, as you're saying, Alan. I get that. I get that you feel like you need to know it's the fear of the unknown that often rocks people, right? But
Yeah, it's true. I
hopefully,
think there's multiple drivers here, and I don't want to suggest that safety is the only driver, but from an employer's perspective, it's very hard to manage the safety of workers when they're working from home.
yeah, and yet performance has to be there, and some people will perform better with the autonomy to make those decisions about where they work best for which tasks.
Sure,
Right.
but even high performers should be safe.
When this is what you're talking about in terms of the boundaries that you mentioned, Trajce, about, well, what happens for a high performer who are actually more prone to burnout, because they're so impassioned, because they're so committed, because they'll do the extra plus, right?
Yeah, especially if they do that type of work, which, they might be in the health industry where they're looking after people who are suffering, or
Or the
ambulance workers, or even prosecutors.
Yeah, you talked about
difficult briefs.
confronting very difficult information, people who have to review legal claims or child abuse claims, that kind of thing, where it's confronting information and you can't really get a gauge on how they're feeling and how they're responding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I certainly with the type of work that I do, it's very common for there to be photographs in the material of an incident scene. And our fresh-faced new lawyers who come and work for us, they often find that very confronting and difficult.
Now,
So,
what about the
Alan,
boundaries that erode from work? The conversations we've had about being on a Zoom meeting and yet somebody's something, where people have taken their laptops into the loo and then caught that they forgot that they turned the camera off. Like, that's the reality of privacy.
I was going to stick more with Alan's. Do you you're getting back to those confronting images?
Yes.
Do you have to look at those photos?
Alan's blushing
Yes,
now.
You do.
Do you have to? Does your junior have to look at them?
Yes,
Because
they do.
You've been listening to Trajce, Sara and Alan, and if you really enjoyed this show, share this with a friend. Submit your 5-star rating on your favourite podcast streaming service. Keep listening and send in your stories. You can email us at hello@ywork.com.au, and of course sign in to our newsletter. You can head straight to our website at www.ywork.com.au. We can't wait to learn about the trouble you've seen in the workplace. And remember, none of the things we've talked about today should be construed as legal advice or any other type of advice. We're just here to talk about all things related to work, and we hope you enjoyed as much as we do. We love it. See you next time.